Alright everybody, welcome back. Tonight's story is one of the creepiest ones that I heard growing up in and around Mexborough, and it's terrified people for decades. And the weird thing is, I think it followed me around, this story, and it's got a couple of personal links to it, to my family. It goes back, this story, because I think it even went back to us childhood at school, and I'm going to explain why. Because tonight I'm talking about the Mexborough Ragger. You can still see some industry in and around Mexborough. There's a lot of new houses, but there's lots of echoes of the past. How things were, how busy this stream of work used to be, boats up and down, bringing in rags, scrap, trade. This was a real hustle and bustle at one point. Yeah, the story of the Mexborough Ragger, it does go back a long time, and it changes like most folklore, if you like, or stories, creepy tales do. They change, they evolve. And when I knew about this story, it was pitched to me at school as a dark figure that hung about near canals at Mexborough, that lurked. And if you dared say the name, they'd chase you. And I'm telling you, you didn't want to get caught by it. There were stories of getting drowned by the Ragger down at Canal. And there were stories about if you dare say its name 3 times in a tunnel in Cadeby that's now sealed up. And I'm not paranormal, I'm not into paranormal investigations or anything like that, so it's pointless for me to even talk about investigating things. These are stories that, what if they had some truth, but like everything, people add things to it to get it a bit more interesting. But looking back, if that is the case, there's a more, I'll say believable, but there's a more human story behind this one. And it's what I'm going to tell you tonight. So stick with me to the end of this vlog. And I'll tell you what I believe, and I'll tell you what I think happened, and what started the stories of the Mexborough Ragger. Yeah, this is JT Vlogs, Creepy Joints. If you're new to the channel, do me a favour and subscribe if you're not subscribed already, because it really helps the channel grow, helps me continue to tell these stories and get stuff out on YouTube. And do me a favour before we continue, hit that like button. It's cringy to ask, but it really does help. Right, enough about that. So this story I heard at school, and when I heard it, it were, like I said, a creeping spectre like a big, tall figure of a person that were seen at canals around Mexborough and Swinton and Denby. And kids used to be terrified to go down to see these canals, especially at dusk. And we're just coming up to dusk now, and I've had to film it this way so that I've got some light. But as a kid at school, to hear stories like that, it was terrifying but also intriguing, and you wanted to know, would you go down to the canal? Could you get your mates round? Would you go down in a few of you and try and find out if there was this apparition, this image that went near the water? And it does remind me of the old 70s, late 70s TV spot that were Lonely Waters, which is one of my favourite public service announcement videos. If you've not seen that, that is the stuff of nightmare fuel, and that would keep you away from a canal, definitely. Yeah. So, yes, there were stories in school, there were stories around about the Mexborough Ragger, and people were genuinely scared, and to this day, people do still talk about it, and they do still have their own take on story. Now, what I found really intriguing is when I was thinking about this vlog and thinking about filming it and coming down to the canal, I cast my mind back to school. Now, this is something that I don't know if it happened in every school. Now, I went to Swinton Comp, and in my time at Swinton Comp, with my friends, James and Dave and others, we liked these type of stories. But what used to really scare me as well was reality of what we called Rag Day. Now, I'll explain, bear with me. So towards the end of term, and if you're moving up a year and the term had ended, there were rumours going around that after school, you were getting ragged. You were getting ragged. And I didn't know what this meant. I didn't have an easy time at school. Like a lot of kids, I was bullied quite a lot. And we aren't touching onto that because that's another vlog. The thought of something happening to me after school on my way home from school, it did used to scare me. And I never knew what this ragging meant. Now, what they used to do, and I don't know, like I said, if it was just unique to South Yorkshire or around here, is they used to rip your clothes off and tear your blazer, rip your shirt, and it was very physical. Pull your tie around your neck, you'd get thumped, you'd get kicked. It weren't brilliant, let me tell you that. And I was petrified because I'd seen and heard stories about this, but I didn't quite understand it. So even got to a point where some classes had let you leave a little bit earlier, the younger classes, to get ahead of the crowd, so you'd got a chase on. You'd basically got the older kids running after you like a scene from 28 Days Later, ravaging you, ripping at your clothes, pulling your blazer. They didn't care if it come off in one clean go or if you had to get on floor, and they kicked you in and ripped it off you. That did happen, and that was very scary. But here's the thing, and this is what I thought, ragging, there's something in this. What if the story that evolved over the years about the Mexborough Ragger give way to this other thing that happened at schools that were just brutal, just crazy? Because it were rag day, you were getting ragged. And in the old-fashioned day as well, Victorian times, I do believe, that was the trade, rag. There were very little money about, you know, and the people used to try and make ends meet, especially in towns like this, Mexborough and Swinton. And that's where the story starts, if you like, of the Mexborough Ragger. Because everywhere I trace and read about it, all points to a girl, a young girl, who were just doing a bit to survive, collecting rags, exchange for food and maybe a bit of silver. But this poor girl were going around streets late at night, and you can only imagine how terrifying that must be, on your own, trying to collect rags in dark, wondering where your next meal's coming from. These are things that, if you think about, they're truly frightening. Truly. And, you know, there's lots of different variations of how it could possibly have evolved or started even, this story. But then how it ended, there's equally amount of guesses and claims. Some people say the little girl became pregnant and lost a child and were killed. Or they lost a child, couldn't bear to live, and ended their own life tragically. Who knows? Either way, it's not a good ending. The other variations are, there was a ragger girl, she collected too many rags, she was struggling to carry them, so she took a shortcut near trains, and it didn't end well. And she comes back to haunt people. But does she? Is she haunting people? You see, what if she's just like us? You know, she's not haunting anybody. And the grief and the loss of the community and the sadness, they didn't know it were, or maybe they did. And maybe it's from recording community and they were sad, and then sadness turned into anger, and anger turned into fear. That's when the story started. Poor lass. It don't bear thinking about, does it? You've got note. You're trying to make an earning. You're trying to survive. And it's still not enough. It's terrible. The other connection with me is that my family, on my mum's side, Dobsons, they had the scrapyard in Mexborough, Dobson scrapyard. My granddad Vera and his brother Brian broke the backs. They grafted, and it were a successful scrap business built up from scratch. And they played hard. They worked hard, but they played hard. They used to drink in pubs around Mexborough, round here. And also they drink in a pub in Swinton, where I might go for a pint one day and show you, called the Gate Inn. Gate Inn's been done up now. But you think back, this is where it started, because the rag trade were there before the scrap. And trading rag and scrap, you could argue that's where my family started. So I do feel a bit of a connection. A little bit, I do. And I was born in Mexborough. I was born in Mexborough Montague Hospital. So I've got this connection to Mexborough. And it's part of my blood. And this story, in my opinion, is more about the poor girl who ended up under tragic circumstances. And like I said before, at school, it became a monster story. It was never mentioned to be a girl. Never. It was never mentioned to be a girl at school. They always said it were a man, an evil man, who killed kids by canal, the Ragger. And they built it up to something like really outlandish and terrifying. But thinking back, I think I know which story I prefer, even though it's tragic. yeah, getting back out of here, there's a little wood. And it gets darker as you go. It does, it gets darker as you go down there, and I can hear voices and stuff. Probably people catching a train. However, these are the steps and it seems a bit lighter. So, thank you again for watching. I really appreciate you supporting my channel. Drop me a comment. Tell me how far you got with this one, if you watched it to end. And also, if you can spare a moment, hit that like button. Consider subscribing, because then I can continue to make these vlogs. See, it's not all that bad. I'm just driving home now, and I do this sometimes. I sit and I've pulled in a little bit, and it's just all coming to me, and I'm just thinking about this story and this walk that I've just been on, and we're so lucky, aren't we? We're so lucky that it's not us, it's not our kids, and that's not happened to us. I just think, maybe I'm getting soft in my old age. I just think it's, you know, I don't know if I believe in spirit world as such, but I hope they've got some peace, and I hope this person can rest, whoever it were, because you just think of your own kids, don't you? Anyway, yeah, I need to get home. Yeah, we get to go home, and it's not too far from Mexborough where I live, as you can see. I think everywhere looks different at night, doesn't it? Everywhere's got its own little corners that are just a little bit obscure. Makes you wonder, makes you think a little bit more. But yeah, I'm really sort of counting my blessings. I feel really fortunate that I'm able to go out and do vlogs like this. And my health's fairly good at the minute. I think I've come through quite a bit over the last few weeks. Them that have been, if you've been sort of following channel, you'll know what I mean. And yeah, I'm very grateful. I'm grateful of all the support, and I'm grateful that I'm coming home tonight. My kids are all right, and I've really enjoyed coming out and doing something different, and going for a little walk, and to talk about a local legend, I guess, that is the Mexborough Ragger. Not all as it seems, is it? Just shows you. I think it's had about 3 endings now, this vlog, so I will say goodbye. Thanks everybody. See you again. Back to sunny Barnborough. Take care.